I always went to college preparatory schools. My parents had that money.
Oh, okay. So that's because you when you hear about Flint, Michigan, and just anything with Detroit, they always talk about just how poor it is, and you don't ever hear the success stories. And so
Every
what you're
every
saying is
every country and every city has its poor parts.
correct.
I've been traveling the world since I was 13 years old. I was a United States ambassador handpicked by Bill Clinton himself. Okay. I went and met the Queen of England when I was 13, 14 years old. I traveled abroad my entire life.
Okay. Okay.
So when a
Very
person be
different
like,
from
That's
okay.
exactly what happened during a recent live stream involving someone connected to boxing champion Claressa Shields. Within moments, the tone became confrontational as the speaker insisted she was tired of rumors and was finally going to tell her side of the story. Before viewers even had time to process what was happening, the live stream had shifted into a series of accusations, emotional reflections, and challenges directed at people she believed had wronged her. But here's what immediately caught everyone's attention. This wasn't presented as a casual conversation. From the very beginning, the speaker claimed she was ready to set the record straight and suggested that people had been spreading false narratives about her for far too long. That opening instantly changed the atmosphere. Instead of simply watching another social media live, viewers felt like they were about to hear a side of the story that had never been shared publicly before. Whether people believed her or not, curiosity took over, and thousands began clipping and sharing moments from the broadcast almost immediately. As the live stream gained momentum, one question kept circulating across social media. Why
"You
With
now?
her
positive?"
today.
She was like, "Yeah." I was like, "Okay, cool. It's not my responsibility no more." Boom.
So you gave her your baby.
Yeah, and then me and her got into it about a Nintendo Wii that I pawned so I could pay a bill at my house. And then she called me and told me I would never see that baby again. And I just asked a simple question because I was the babysitter for her while she went and trained. So my question was, who's going to watch this baby for you while you go train? Her exact words was my sister Michelle and Terry Key. Bitch, is you dumb? Terry Key is a known rapist in our family, and you told me that this tried to you before, and you gonna tell me you finna leave a baby that can't talk with this? Is you out your this done touched his own kids before?
This is a
So yeah, I
lot.
called the police. I sure the did. I called the police to get the baby because to protect you. You better believe I'm gonna protect something that came out of me.
So where's the baby now?
Um, I was asked not to disclose that because the people that are related to me on where she is does not want
Public to
they,
know.
yeah, they don't want
But
they don't
the
want
baby
so
is safe. The baby's safe,
the baby is with
taken
me
care of.
still, but
Okay.
she's just being taken care of by another person. I pay child support for this
Why
shit.
had this dispute suddenly become public? Why choose a live stream instead of handling these issues privately? And perhaps the biggest question of all, what prompted someone to speak with such emotion in front of a public audience? Those questions are a big reason the live stream spread so quickly. People weren't just listening to the claims being made, they were trying to understand what might have happened behind the scenes to bring everyone to this point. Now, it's important to remember that many of the statements made during the live stream were allegations presented by the speaker and have not been independently verified. Because of that, we're focusing on what was said during the broadcast and how audiences reacted, rather than treating any of those claims as established facts. And if you thought the opening was intense, what happened next is what truly turned this live stream into one of the biggest talking points online. As more viewers joined the live stream, it became obvious that this wasn't going to be a short statement followed by a quick sign-off. Instead, the speaker continued returning to the same point over and over again. She believed people had been telling only one side of the story, and now she intended to tell hers. That persistence immediately grabbed people's attention because it suggested there was much more history behind the public feud than most viewers had realized. One of the biggest themes throughout the broadcast was the repeated suggestion that she possessed receipts. While she didn't reveal everything at once, she repeatedly implied that she possessed information that could support her version of events. That single word, receipts, was enough to keep viewers glued to the stream. On social media, whenever someone hints they have proof but doesn't immediately reveal it, curiosity skyrockets. People began wondering whether actual evidence would appear before the live stream ended, or whether this was only the beginning of a much larger public dispute.
You see how that works? I'm a dangerous to with. Because this is one thing people better know about me. I never cared about burning a motherfucking bridge because I'll pour gasoline on that and pour gasoline on me and light me on fire with a Zippo and hug you. Because one thing's for sure, it's always water up underneath a bridge and I can swim, bitch, can you?
That's an excellent analogy. So I guess, have you spoken to Papoose?
I told Claressa off rip, I don't want to speak to no that you talking to until y'all married. You and that and every relationship until a marriage I see. Quote unquote.
So who do you think is supporting Papoose right now? Because Remy said she was supporting him and she asked him to move out and he refused to move. Then he started dating this credit repair chick that actually went on vacation with them in Hawaii when they were in Hawaii around the time when, you know, the boxing commission in Detroit had removed her.
What made the situation even more intriguing was the confidence with which she spoke. She wasn't presenting herself as someone who simply wanted attention. Instead, she framed herself as someone who had remained quiet for too long and had finally reached a point where staying silent was no longer an option. Whether viewers agreed with that perspective or not, the emotion behind her words made it clear that this conflict had been building long before anyone watching had heard about it. As the live stream continued, references to past relationships, old disagreements, and family dynamics began surfacing. The speaker repeatedly suggested that there were details the public didn't know, and claimed that certain narratives circulating online were incomplete or misleading. These were presented as her personal account of events and have not been independently verified, but they significantly shaped the tone of the live stream. That's when the audience realized something important. This was no longer just about responding to rumors. It was becoming an attempt to rewrite the public narrative. Viewers weren't only listening for the next accusation, they were trying to piece together years of family history from scattered comments, emotional reactions, and references to events that had allegedly happened long before the live stream ever began. Every few minutes seemed to raise another question instead of providing an answer, and that uncertainty is exactly what kept people watching.
So that everything is concealed and everything. So I appreciate you, okay?
I appreciate you more and thank you.
But if viewers thought the live stream couldn't become any more emotional, the next section would take the conversation in a completely different direction, shifting from defending a reputation to discussing money, influence, and the personal costs of a family feud. Just when it seemed like the live stream had settled into a back and forth about reputation, the conversation took another unexpected turn. Instead of focusing only on who said what, the speaker began discussing money. According to her, financial disagreements had become one of the biggest reasons relationships had broken down over time. While she didn't present documentation during the live stream, she repeatedly suggested that certain financial situations had been misunderstood by the public and that there was much more to the story than people realized. These were presented as her own claims during the live stream and have not been independently verified. For many viewers, this marked a major shift in the tone of the broadcast. Internet drama often begins with arguments and accusations, but once conversations move toward money, audiences naturally become even more curious. people started wondering whether financial disagreements had been quietly fueling this conflict for years without anyone realizing it. The speaker also pushed back against the idea that she was simply looking for attention. She argued that if clout had been her goal, she would have handled things very differently. Instead, she insisted that she had reached a breaking point after remaining silent for too long. Whether viewers accepted that explanation depended largely on which side of the story they already believed, but it sparked a wave of debate across comment sections.